Hi and welcome. I'm super excited today to tell you about the two-stage dust collector that I've invented. It's basically a shop vac with a dust topper as its separator. I've seen a lot of systems out there that stack a bucket and a dust topper or a dust deputy on top of the system that makes it really tall, or beside the system, which is really wide. Now this only adds 6.5 inches to the overall height of the shop vac. I've chosen to use the Dustopper because it's very short in its height and that helps me achieve my goal of getting this as small as possible. Now, it is expensive, and those of you who have the time and the abilities, you could build your own separator, such as a top hat or a fill-fine separator. But I'm designing this to make it as easy to build as possible if you're okay spending the money that it takes to buy the components. So we'll collect dust as usual using our intake nozzle and hose. So all that dust and dirty air or dusty air will go in through here into the dust topper here and go around in circles, and then all the heavy debris will really fall into the canister here. Actually, almost 99% of the debris falls into this canister here. The remaining air is sucked up through the middle of the dust topper into the white bucket here that houses the filter. And then so that filtered air then gets sucked into the motor and then out the stock exhaust in the back. So I've chosen to recess my system into the canister here, and that's to achieve the shortest vertical height that I could. Now, I still have quite a bit of capacity here, so let's just do a check and some quick calculations. So it sits down around that deep, and the overall height is about that deep. Let me just plug that in here. Yeah, so it looks like we have a 1 Home Depot bucket and a half worth of capacity in here. And if I wanted to, I could actually build the system even higher to get more capacity, or even put it on top of like a larger garbage can to get even more capacity. Despite the fact that I'm an engineer, in case you don't trust me, we can test this another way. Let's fill this to about the same level as my system would have it, and then transfer. So we'll start first with the shop vac. So this is a shop vac I bought in 1990 when I was in high school. It still runs great. Let's open it up and take a look at it in the inside, and we'll see the changes that I've made. So inside here, I've removed the cage that has a float for detecting how much water is in the bin, but we don't need that anymore, so I've taken that out. And as well, this intake used to have a Y that comes out of it. I've taken that off so that we have a nice flat surface to work with. We won't be using this intake going forward in the future. Next up, we've got the dust topper and the frame that it sits in. The dust topper is available from Home Depot in the US and also recently in Canada. Now, let's take a look at close up to see the changes I've made to the dust topper. So here I've filled in some of the gaps that are in the dust topper for it to latch onto a bucket. Well, we don't need a bucket in the system, so I've filled in those gaps. The other thing I've done, it's kind of hard to see here, is in order to fit this 90-degree elbow that usually sits on top of the dust topper, I actually wanted it in here, but in order to fit it in all the way, I had to expand it a bit. So I have expanded it a bit, and I filled in that gap with a bit of hot melt glue. Now I choose hot melt glue because it's really easy to take off later should I want to repurpose this one day for something else. Now let's look at the bottom. So here I've cut out a hole, and it's off center. It's off center by 1.5 inches, and that's essentially just to shift it over so I can fit the elbow within the confines of my bottom canister here. I've held the dust topper in with screws all the way around. Now the screws don't go through the dust topper. I didn't want to damage the dust topper, so they're just right beside it. And then I've got some weather stripping here to make sure it's all airtight. And now the filter housing. The filter housing is composed of a bucket. This is a 5-liter bucket, or 1.25 gallon bucket. And I've cut a hole in the bottom. That hole in the bottom is the same size as this hole here for the filter. Now let's look at the matching lid for this bucket. I've drilled a 2-inch hole that's 1.5 inches off center, and that's what's going to couple to the dust topper here, like that. Now let's talk about the filter. The filter is a standard rigid HEPA filter that I got from Home Depot. It's the smallest size that they make. Now I've chosen the smallest size because with two-stage separation, there won't be very much dust at all on this filter at any point in time. And as such, I can actually get away with a smaller filter than a larger filter. Typically that would get super clogged and not be able to breathe very well. All right, let's put together the motor, the filter housing, and the filter. So the filter housing simply just snaps on. So I did add a little bit of Gorilla Tape, and that's just to make it a nice snug fit, because it's really hard to drill a hole this size and make it fit perfectly. So if you don't have a drill that's the perfect size, you can actually cut it out with an X-Acto knife or a razor blade. It doesn't have to be perfect because the air will be sealed by this gasket here that's on the filter. So this filter then just presses in. So we'll just press that in, friction fit. And then we'll add the lid on. So there we go. So that's the motor assembly. And that's one of the 3 key pieces. Okay, so the canister, there's nothing special about it. I didn't modify it in any ways. There is a little bit of a lip here, and I've taken advantage of that, and that's what the frame sits on. So we'll just place that into the, place the frame with the Dustopper into the canister, and it just basically sits right in and sits on that ledge. Nothing much to it. And then the motor housing also just basically sits right on. Remember, we've got that hole that's slightly offset, and that just goes through the frame here, and we got to line up that hole. Let me just make sure it's lined up. And there we go. So that's it. It's fully assembled, and I've found that there's no need for any sort of fasteners to hold it all together because it just works. And I'm able to slide this and roll this around the shop. So let's give it a test drive and see how it goes. All right, let's test wheeling this thing around. Remember, the 3 parts are just kind of fit together. So I can just wheel this around like this, move it around the shop. No real problems there. All right, remember when I put this together, the filter was pretty clean, and so was the filter housing, the white bucket. That was pretty clean. So let's try this out with some real dust and see how much it sucks. Alright, let's check out the filter and see how it's looking. Just pull that off, flip this upside down, take off the lid here. Take a look inside. How much dust is there? Not much. Alright, let's just pull off the whole filter housing with the filter. I'll take a closer look. Pull this apart. Wow, barely anything in there. Look at that filter. So little. So now we've shown that this Dustopper works really well separating that dust even though I've sucked up so much. Okay, let's look inside the canister just to confirm how much we got that time. All right, so that's what we got, and that's what I collected. I hope you've enjoyed my video. The wishful thinking part of me is hoping that this starts a whole new era of seeing other people come up with similar ideas where we're thinking inside the box instead of on top or beside it. My next video would probably be along the lines of coming up with a do-it-yourself separator where we're replacing that Dustopper with a fill-thine or top hat design. So please like, please subscribe. This helps keep me motivated so that I can continue to iterate on this design to make it better, make it different, or come up with something totally radically out there. Thank you for watching. Until next time, see you later.
GoPro, start recording. GoPro, start recording. GoPro, start recording.